Today, we're joined by Ramón Perisé, head of R&D at legendary Basque restaurant Mugaritz, and Vayu Hill-Maini, a bioengineering professor here at Stanford, whose lab studies fungi and fermentation as systems of sustainability. Together, they're reimagining what creativity looks like in the lab and in the kitchen, blending the sensory and the scientific to ask what fermentation can teach us about the future of food. Their collaboration marks the first time Stanford has invited a chef into an artist residency, a partnership that reminds us that discovery can begin anywhere, even in something as alive and unpredictable as a mushroom. Here's our conversation with Ramón and Vayu. So, just to start, how did the two of you first meet, and how did this collaboration begin?
I remember that I met Vayu many years ago.
And I was like a freshman in college, I think. We had the initial meeting, right?
Yeah, we have a meeting, but you came to the restaurant, to Mugaritz, right?
Right. Many years later, I came. But even before that, when I was a young college student, kind of trying to find my way in the world of food and science, somehow trying to find a path, I was connected with Ramón on Skype. That time we used Skype. And I was studying in rural Minnesota in this small liberal arts school, and I was kind of confused about what to do. And, our conversation was really inspiring to me and really influential because I got to hear about Mugaritz and their approach to creativity, design, science, engineering, innovation, and kind of realizing that, like, working between food and science, I wasn't lost, but there was places that were really putting it at their center. And so, for you, it's probably just another conversation with some random person. For me, it was a huge moment in my career to kind of understand that there was a world and a field that I hadn't yet explored. And then, Ramón, I came to Basque Country 10 years later to visit you.
Yes. You visited me. I remember you have been working in a program with kids.
Yeah.
Teaching them how to cook, how to eat, and so on. And it seems to me very, very interesting. You were very committed with the food and so on. And during these years, I had few conversations like this one with different people. It is something that it's happening several times. Yeah, people who connect Mugaritz just looking for something.
Yeah.
So, Vayu, I know you've also worked in restaurants in the past before you came to Stanford. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I came to the U.S. originally to work in restaurants. I grew up in Sweden, Stockholm. My mom was a single parent for most of her life. Me and her, my sister and her, she loves food, and I had to help out cooking at home. And it turned out that what started as a chore became my biggest interest, passion, and hobby that still fuels me today. So I originally moved to the U.S. To work in restaurants. I worked in New York City, in a few places, peeling onions and stuff in basements. Eventually, I became the head of this small sandwich shop on the Lower East Side called Tiny's Giant Sandwich Shop. I was 18 and 2 meters tall, so Tiny's Giant fit perfectly. And I was basically put in charge of reimagining their entire menu, their concept, and their whole kitchen. So all of a sudden I had, 4 people working for me. I had to do, items to the menu. I was running the kitchen, and we were, named in New York Times as the best veggie burger around Manhattan, or Serious Eats, which is an exciting food blog about best sandwiches around the city. And it was really through these experiences in the kitchen that I discovered science. Not because I was interested in science on its own, but because I was seeking more creativity and more ways to expand beyond what I was reading in recipe books. So after that, I went to college, and in college, found a lot of tension initially between, I love food, and I had to take classes in philosophy, biochemistry, economics, whatever. And it was really, I was going to drop out, but I had this opportunity to go to Spain, my first summer in college, to work in what's similar to Mugaritz. It was sort of an R&D center started by Ferran Adria called Fundación Alicia. And I was an intern there for a summer. And I came away from that experience not only learning from Ferran and the team, but the whole idea of physics, chemistry, biology has meaning to me because it's connected to food, We wrote a book about different molecules, and I can use them in the kitchen. It's sitting on my shelf. And that put me on this path of this like, oh, I want to do work at the interface. And that's, after that summer, I talked to Ramón, and I started to realize there's a path there. And ever since then, I've been on this path. I worked as, in restaurants in Sweden over the summer. I was a private chef on the weekends to pay for school. And I also worked in research labs studying microbiomes. Even in my PhD, when I did study the human gut microbiome and nutrition, I was missing the food part, making food, the aesthetics of it. But at the end of my PhD, I went to Basque country. Okay, I was finishing my degree. I had published papers in, Science and other journals about microbiomes and their impact on human health. And in Basque country, I realized, oh my God, all this microbial stuff I can bring to fermentation and flavor and aesthetics. I met Ramón. I visited Mugaritz. I found a new path for myself, and that's sort of what I do at Stanford as a professor. So I will say that kind of the interactions I've had with people like Ramón have been deeply influential. And I think that I've always wanted to do this thing, and Stanford is now the place that allows me to do this thing. That for many, many places has been controversial, at many times in my life has been controversial. Who are you actually? What are you actually doing? As soon as I told Stanford I want to build a kitchen and a lab, oh yeah, awesome, we're in. And the residency kind of speaks and continues that. And I just feel so privileged, so lucky, like growing up, cooking in the kitchen, falling in love with this craft. I can still cook, but just in a different way.
I love that this many years later, you now found another way to collaborate. So I remember, I don't know, when was this? Over a year ago, Vayu, you contacted me about our visiting artist programs very soon after you arrived on campus. And I was really excited because we had never had a chef as an artist in residence. But is this something that you've always imagined having in your lab? Or when did you come up with the idea of inviting a chef to collaborate?
I mean, this might be embarrassing, but it is really a dream come true and something I've been, Ramón, like you are, this happening, that you being here for me is something I've been dreaming of since I was 18, probably. Like working in restaurants, reading books, learning about Mugaritz, their cookbooks, their philosophy. My goal and my sort of path has always been to try to find a connection between gastronomy and science and engineering. And it wasn't always clear how that was going to happen. But I think looking to role models, I sort of found like there is a there. And I had a very influential experience when I was working in Spain in college at some point in this kind of R&D development center that came out of Ferran Adria and El Bulli, which was a similar kind of creative avant-garde restaurant like Mugaritz. And ever since then, I wanted to find ways to sort of, not only for scientists to immerse themselves in their environments, but for them to come to our environments and for us to exchange and learn. So I think the idea has always been there. The wish has always been there. I think finding the right place, the right time, the right person, I felt so lucky to come to Stanford and have excitement shared from all sides that this is a thing we could do, and it's meaningful and it's important and it's relevant. That's not always been the case. So I think in some ways I've been like thinking and sharing it. Many contexts maybe being like, that's so weird. Like, what is this actually? But here, I think when we were talking, Ellen, and now this is manifesting, it's like, yes, Stanford, we get it.
I have to say that we feel exactly the same. We feel so thankful and so lucky to be here with you, to share this time with you, to be able to learn from different disciplines here in Stanford, and as well we are very, very pleased to be the first ones, because we like to be all the time in the avant-garde, and if we can open, a new path for the chef and together with the scientist. So we are very, very glad to do it. And I think that, sometimes Andoni used to say that reaching that point is one of the visions that we have in Mugaritz. We have been investing.
Really?
Yes, we have been investing for so many years trying to create nets to to create bondings with different people with different disciplines all around the world, to develop language, to be able to be understood and to understand science. And this is one of the, we reached that point.
Yeah, so you both have referred to Mugaritz as really being on the forefront of the avant-garde. And I know the restaurant really approaches food in an unusual way. It's not just about the taste and presentation. It's really deeper than that. Can you talk a little bit, for those who don't know of Mugaritz, about the foundation of the restaurant?
Yeah, Mugaritz is a pretty mature project. Now is 28 years old. We started in 1998, and one thing that is clear is that Mugaritz is a very avant-garde restaurant, in the sense that we don't care too much about the taste of our food. We care about that our food made sense, and we care about the narrative that we can find behind the food, right? So Mugaritz, on that sense, is not a very friendly restaurant for a guest. It's a very challenging, and normally when you visit let's say a regular restaurant, you sit on the table and you are a passive subject. And in Mugaritz, you have to be very active in order to enjoy the experience. So on that way, Mugaritz is on the avant-garde, and being in the avant-garde means that it will be harmful. It's not easy to be there. And yes, this is the vision that we have in Mugaritz.
It's amazing. I really need to come one of these days. So Vayu, I also feel like the work that you're doing in your lab feels avant-garde to me. I know that you have talked about doing experiments in genetic gastronomy and fungal domestication. Can you explain what you mean by that and connect the dots between that work, the work with sustainability, and consumable products?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things I just want to kind of echo back to Ramón is that I think is so interesting about Mugaritz, and I think really connects with our philosophy as a lab, is the idea that in order for gastronomy to be considered art, it has to engage with emotions beyond pleasure. Like artists don't just try to please, they try to provoke and inspire. And Mugaritz, like something that resonates with me from their philosophy is that idea. Right, and I think in that sense, it's truly art, and I think I find a lot of meaning in that, actually, as a scientist, as a professor. In that, part of our job too is to inspire and provoke and engage people. Like, we're motivated by the big picture questions. We want to create solutions for real world problems, and another way we can have impact is to say, look, what if this is possible? How does it make us think? What can we do with that? And in some ways, like Ramón coming to Stanford makes me feel more at home, because I didn't appreciate until this residency how much that philosophy of gastronomy and fine dining has influenced my view and my philosophy as a PI. Like, I hadn't made that connection, but now it's so clear, because what I'm hearing from Ramón is exactly how I feel and how I see things, and what I try to relate to our lab. Because sometimes you can feel unsatisfied, like, oh, like my project, like I tell this story, how it's going to solve a disease, and it feels so far away. But what if we reframe and say, you know what? There's an impact in the near term, which is provoking thought and inspiring. And that's really worthwhile too. How we approach our lab is really being at the avant-garde and the cutting edge. Like, we're operating at the interface of bioengineering, and gastronomy. Two fields that historically have been very, very separate. One in academia, one in fine dining, and we want to find the interface there. And it's not just an artistic academic exercise, it's about solving problems. The food system is 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions. We do have to reimagine what we eat and how we produce that food. Our approach is to look at fungi as one solution, the world of molds and mushrooms. They have incredible capabilities to make flavors, nutrients, to recycle waste. They're intriguing, they're full of fundamental discovery and new biological solutions. And in our lab, kind of the key, I guess, philosophy is that we want to learn about fungi. We're going deep and studying their genomes, their DNA. We want to engineer fungi. We want to sort of program and direct what they can do for us. But we also want to integrate this idea of the aesthetics of sustainability, that to solve sustainability challenges, it isn't just a technological sort of innovation that's needed. It's also culture. When we think about food, we need to make people want to eat the new products, the new approaches. And so that's why we work very closely with, Ramón and people like him to kind of make that connection, from end to end. And so some of the ideas we're working on, for example, is this idea of genetic gastronomy. Molecular gastronomy was a big kind of transformative revolution in the world of gastronomy and food several decades ago now. People basically brought physics and chemistry into the kitchen. They made gels and foams. They completely challenged like texture and flavor and experience. I think now what we're thinking about is that with all the wealth of DNA sequencing and information about microorganisms and molecules, how do we move beyond kind of this idea of recipes as materials, but actually recipes as A, T, G, and C from the genome of an organism? And how do we program and tune that for the flavors and outputs that we want? And I think that's kind of one of the key kind of philosophies in the lab at this moment. We're only 1 year in, and we'll see how it goes. But hopefully in 28 years, we're in the same position like Mugaritz, inspiring and leading the edge.
Well, it was so inspiring just yesterday in your lab. You're working with an organism called Neurospora and breaking it apart to do some really interesting things. Can you were talking about, extracting color and flavor. Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, so Ellen, you're asking about this idea of Neurospora. I mean, maybe Ramón, I would love to hear kind of what is your, you've started using and looking at it, and I'm kind of curious as a chef, how do you view, how do you tell a story from that perspective? And then I would love to kind of interject with how we're building off of that.
For us, it's something completely new, 100% new. And believe me that this is not that easy to find something new, pretty new in the kitchen. We start working with the filamentous fungi a few years ago. And right now, everybody is working, with Aspergillus and Rhizopus, and so on and so on. What with Neurospora is something 100% new. The profile of aroma, flavor, the texture that you can obtain through Neurospora, even the look, that orange, strong and deep orange color is something amazing. So in Mugaritz, we have been working in a sake-ish. So we develop an analog of sake with the BCC and the Harvard and Stanford, and we are serving that sake-ish to our guests alongside with a little cake made out of fermented rice, fermented with Neurospora. And now all our guests and all the chefs are they know now that there's a new guy on the room, which is Neurospora, and they can now start working and creating new dishes through or using that microorganism. And that's great because they will apply the Neurospora to so many things that for sure we will find solutions for the future using Neurospora.
I mean, so it's really cool to hear your perspective, Ramón, because it sounds like it's a new creative tool kind of in the toolbox for the chef.
Absolutely, and that idea of genetic gastronomy is completely crazy. The first time that I hear this is in your lab, and it's crazy because right now we are able to use the microorganisms to create almost everything. Flavor, color, texture, and take advantage of everything we have in in the restaurant. So maybe we can do, we call it no foods, because we can do something out of nothing using the microorganisms, and will be a complete new playground.
So Neurospora, you were saying that it changes the makeup of other foods. Can you describe the scientific how it works?
So I guess to zoom out, fermentation is a powerful way that humans have transformed ingredients to make flavors, nutrients, and meet local demands in sustainability. And this includes fungi. Some people might be icked out and think, oh my God, I don't want to eat molds. Molds are the powerhouses that make some of our most delicious foods. Sake, soy sauce, miso. Those umami bombs are only available because of filamentous fungi or molds. Camembert, blue cheese, brie, right? The list goes on. These fungi or molds actually have fueled some of the most delicious revolutions in fermentation in human history and been really, really impactful. So as a result, a lot of chefs have started to use them. What our lab kind of realized is that there's new demands now. We have to kind of reimagine the food system. And one of the issues is food waste. Over 30% of all the food that's produced is wasted. And basically, we need to waste less and make nutritious food to kind of help create security and sustainability. So instead of kind of reinventing the wheel, we looked at a traditional approach that takes waste and turns it into food. In Indonesia, on the island of Java, where they take soy milk waste and they make a meat substitute, essentially, called oncom. By studying that process, we discovered a fungus called Neurospora intermedia that was domesticated by humans to turn waste into food. It grows fast, it changes the flavor, it makes proteins and vitamins. It's orange, and it's delicious. So building off of those kind of fundamental discoveries and observation, we saw there's an opportunity to use Neurospora, not just in Indonesia, but maybe in other contexts where we have to, create new flavors, new experiences. And so there's this orange fungus, Neurospora intermedia now, that's sort of becoming a new tool in dining and in gastronomy, and also in sustainability. We have a grant from the sustainability school at Stanford for Neurospora intermedia to turn waste into food. And so we're going really deep into the science, understanding how it breaks down different material, what molecules and nutrients and flavor it makes. We're also developing tools to genetically modify it, to program the flavor and nutrition to make it better. But then, as Ramón said, we're also working with chefs to say, hey, this is a tool in your toolbox. In sustainability, in flavor, in gastronomy, you don't have to just use these other things. You can use this new thing, and it opens doors in color, flavor, aesthetics, all of that. And I'm just really excited about seeing places like Mugaritz adopt it and, be excited, because we have to think about cultural change as well. And I think these restaurants are at the frontier of that, right? If they start talking, building a language, engaging customers, getting other chefs excited, I think that's over time how we kind of, make people open.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that there's food being developed in a lab at Stanford that is going on to be served at a Michelin-starred restaurant. But going back to what you're saying about how they talk about it, how they engage people with it, there's really a language that Mugaritz is developing as, food as metaphor. The talk that you're going to be giving this week is about fermentation as a living narrative, connecting ecosystems. Can you talk about how you think about natural cycles and fermentation in relation to concepts like time, patience, change?
Yeah, fermentation is the metaphor of everything, almost. So what happens at micro scale, it happens at macro scale. So we can see very clearly that through fermentation, that everything is fractal. So sometimes I used to take a look of the curve of growing of the yeast or bacteria, and you can see that everything depends on the resources that they have to grow, the population that are growing in a certain time, and the amount of toxins that they are producing. And I used to think to to the humans as well. So we are in a world with some resources. We are creating contamination. We are growing as a human beings, the population, and we have the microorganisms, and we can see what's going on, what's happening, the exponential growing, the sustainability growing, and then the phase of death. So sometimes I used to think about in which phase we are, in the exponential growing or in the death line. So, and you can see this very clearly, and as well the influence of the microorganisms in our landscape is very clear. In the Basque Country is a very green place, full of pastures, and we have these pastures because we have sheep, the Lacha sheep, and we produce a cheese which is called Idiazabal cheese. So we have these greenlands because we are producing cheese, because we are growing microorganisms on the milk. So the impact of the fermentation in the landscape is very, very clear. And as well, we have our own landscape. Inside, we have our microbiota, which is another landscape, and we are part of this. And yeah, there's so many connections as well. The terroir. I remember a paper published by David Chan and Dan Felder a few years ago talking about the microbiological terroir. So, and this is true. The fermented food has a terroir, so the expression of a land, of a people, of a process through microorganisms, because we are living together, we are evolving together. And this is very clear for me, and we can explain it through fermentation.
And that, relates to the community that you are kind of bringing together at Stanford. I mean, there's the different points of contact that you've already had that Vayu is introducing you to, folks from Stanford Dining, the D School, the business school. It's kind of, you're helping to build this kind of larger network and community around this kind of work. How are you doing that? And are there things that's opening up?
I mean, I think one of the things that I was talking with Ramon about just yesterday, every day we have like life-changing conversations, is, I've spent time working, in labs and stuff in US, but also in restaurants and sort of gastronomy in Europe. And I think one of the things that I really, big picture, I hope we can build here, which they have so beautifully and well established in the Basque Country, is an ecosystem. An ecosystem that really bridges gastronomy at the center with science and engineering. All the universities, are very plugged in with culture, with art. Like, how do we kind of bring that to California? Like, we have all the products. We have an amazing agricultural landscape. We have incredible technological innovation, like no other place really in the world, I would say. Like, it's just, the innovation here is out of control. You have incredible universities, intellectual leadership, artists, and restaurants, and wineries. We have Napa, Sonoma, you have San Francisco. I mean, at the same time, though, I feel like we're still operating in sort of like separate silos. And so what I think the dream is that one day we have the ecosystem that you see in Basque Country or in Copenhagen, where like, it's just natural that, oh yeah, the chef in residence at Stanford is happening again. And people from Napa and Sonoma are coming down, and from this, and we're going to the Central Valley and seeing the olive harvest. It's like, I think ultimately that's what I dream about, and I think that's what I hope that this can inspire. Like, it goes beyond the residency. The residency is an amazing platform that I hope inspires something bigger in this region, in this area. And from there, people open other restaurants and they start universities. And there's just like so much crosstalk. You see the same thing in Denmark. I grew up in Sweden. And when I was young, going to Copenhagen was like a food wasteland. It was beer and pork sausages. Then you had this restaurant called Noma that really started kind of rethinking and reimagining gastronomy in Scandinavia. And from there, people trained and learned, and they opened their own restaurants and they opened companies. And like, now Copenhagen is like one of the centers in the world for sort of bridging gastronomy and innovation in science and other places. And it's like, yeah, I think I dream of a time when Stanford is that for this region.
But you two are really unique in this collaboration. You've both worked, you're both trained in science and culinary art, and you can speak each other's languages. And that is highly unusual, I think. So, how can we make it possible for more chefs and bioengineers to co create together?
I mean, I think one of the things is, keeping a program like this going beyond this first trial period, right? I think it's really powerful to think about as more people come engaged, like it's just going to become natural. And I think it's just going to grow exponentially because chefs who come from here then go to their regions, they implement, they teach, they learn, they educate their diners, their collaborators. And we at Stanford, start incorporating their philosophy and approach in our thinking. I think there's also a more concrete way. I mean, Ramon, we've been talking about this idea just the last few days of the Neurospora, zine or something. Like, do you want to talk about, I mean, how do we kind of actually create tangible things?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the outputs that we want to achieve through the residency is just to have a little Neurospora guide or something like that, just to show how beautiful it is, to explain how to reproduce the spores, how to use the spores, and all the possibilities that opens to you in your kitchen. So we can do something that is 360 degrees around Neurospora, and it will be an object, and will be teach the chefs and the people about that new bridge that we are building between chefs and the scientists here in Stanford. But as Bayu said, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the more people who see this work and engage with this work, the more people will jump on board. But you're exposing a lot of people at Stanford to this kind of work with your upcoming workshops. And can you talk a little bit about the engagements that are happening during the residency now, and then what's coming up in the spring?
Yes. So in the workshops, we want to put our hands to work. And this is very important because there's one thing this is the connection hand to mind. And working and playing is the best way to learn, which is clear. All the child learns through play, and we will play during the workshops. We will do all the workshops in the farm, so we will be able to see what's growing on the farm, to pick different products, and then we're gonna pickle it. We're gonna produce, something that will be very, very interesting, the aesthetics, and we will let ferment our produce. And then on April, we will take this produce and we want to prepare a big dinner or a big lunch, and then we will close all the circle. So we will talk about the produce, the seasonality of the produce, how we can keep it, how this produce is transformed during the time, and then how we can cook it and how we can nourish ourselves, not just with the product, but with the culture that we can develop around it.
So are people are going to be able to see the change over time, because you're here now in November and then you'll be back in April? What's going to happen between those two periods of time?
Well, during that periods of time, we have to keep going, talking with Bayu, just in order to be able to finally do some installations in Stanford and to prepare all these amazing dinners. And maybe something interesting will happen in the lab. Maybe we open a pop-up restaurant in the lab, and the people will be able to, to have a very, very interesting, speak easy dinner here in BioX.
And then the other thing is, I mean, we're going to try to make a sculpture installation of the jars and ferments that are put together at the workshops in one of the most publicly visited dining halls. Like, we're going to put them out there for undergrads and students to run into and question and be disgusted by, or impressed by or inspired, right? Like the idea is that we set it up now, and over time, people every day going to the dining hall and even to the farm will be able to observe change. And that's what fermentation is. It's about change and time.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
It's going to be amazing
how those jars change, and then be able to open them and eat them.
And celebrate communally as a community that was constructed by microbes.
Yeah. In thinking about what you hope remains after this collaboration, if you're thinking about fermentation as a way of co-creating meaning, what is one thing, like an idea or a feeling that you hope will continue to ferment long after the residency ends?
After the residence, I hope that we will be friends forever, and we will keep connected with Stanford. Mugaritz as well is always in a process of transformation, and we have been using our front of the house as a living laboratory. So, and this is very important for us. We have been developing a lot of different projects in our front of the house with real guests, and is a very good platform to try different things. So maybe we can, in the future, keep going collaborating just in order to, to use Mugaritz to test prototypes in the real world, and as well to do the first scale or the first pilot for the produce that maybe Vayu can produce in the laboratory. So this could be one very interesting collaboration, and as well the exchange of information. We are learning so much about how the science or the scientifics are working. Maybe they can learn a little bit as well from our, way to work. Vayu knows a lot about this, and talking about the aesthetics, you can see the aesthetics of Vayu laboratory.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's very clear.
Yeah. I think that, I agree with Ramon, everything you said. I think this is a long-term foundation. And I think two parts to that. It's like people exchange, right? So students at Stanford, maybe in bioengineering, sustainability, arts, what if undergrads do as part of this, a summer internship at Mugaritz? Like you're studying earth science, but you are going to go to Mugaritz for 6 months, right? Like I think there's an element of exchange between our worlds where maybe their cooks come to Stanford. And so I really hope that, as Ramon said, the foundation is there, and really to nurture, I think, student experiences at Stanford in a new way. I think beyond that, I hope that this sort of people come away from this and they're fermenting in their brains that, bioengineering and gastronomy and sustainability and art. Oh, yeah, of course. Right? I think right now that's sort of like, what is, people are asking, what does Ramon do? Like, what is he doing here? Can you explain a little, like, bioex, like bioengineering, art, what? I think what I hope is that's just, okay, of course. And back to the sort of ecosystem idea, that I think in Basque country, people will be like, chef in the lab. Oh, yeah, cool. In Denmark, probably similarly. So Copenhagen. So I think like that idea of fermenting and sort of becoming part of people's mindset would be a huge win, an exciting kind of impact,
Yeah, this is very important to create that ecosystem in which a chef could be here around, okay, with something natural, something that is happening and is natural, and it made sense for everybody.
I agree. I hope that we can normalize this practice and this exchange, and I also hope that we can stay connected forever.